everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Overtime. I'm once again joined by Saraf Pfaff and Susan Pellechio. And today's going to be interesting because, as we all know, whether it's ransomware episodes that you saw with Colonial Gas and all the supply chains of gas and going down, and when you go to stores, you see prices going up, or just products haven't been in stock for months now. We're talking many months. Well, today we're going to actually look in and understand the logistics and supply chains and why these issues are happening, and maybe some ways that we can overcome that. So, without much further ado, I welcome my guests here, and hello, everybody.
Hello.
Good to
Once
see you.
again, yes. So, I guess where I would like to start is, what do you both see is driving this kind of price increase? But also, I go to Home Depot and there's just no products on the shelves like there used to be. Paints are gone. Cleaning supplies are not there. Broom handles or different types of spades or that for gardening equipment. It can't just be that everybody's buying the same shovel on a Saturday, every Saturday. So what have you guys seen with your industry experience and knowledge and know-how? What do you think is causing a lot of this?
Well, I'll start. I think there's a lot of it, and nothing is obviously a perfect answer, but it's a lot of supply shortage is really what we have been dealing with in the last 12, 18 months. Unprecedented supply shortages that we never, ever expected. If you go back to with COVID, under COVID, we closed down lumber mills. We shut them down. Kaput. Got to take a 3-month break because we didn't want to transmit COVID. Well, when you shut a factory down, that supply now is gone. It's gone from the market. You can start back up again, but you're going to feel a blip where all of a sudden it doesn't exist. The lumber doesn't exist. I was sharing with you guys, you move on from COVID, we are also still having supply shortages, not just the gasoline with Colonial Pipeline, but we're right now in a foam shortage. I don't know if you guys had heard about our current foam shortage, but if you're trying to buy upholstered furniture, apparently it's impacting car and boat manufacturers that need upholstery. The foam plants they were hit during the big storm down in Texas, the ice storm that shut down the windmills, that shut down the power grid. Well, in the middle of that shutdown, they were producing foam in their machines. And it was a liquid product that then solidifies. The machine gets shut down due to a power shortage. Next thing you know, the foam solidifies in the machine itself. As I understand it, the machines they're useless. They're having to be removed and brand new ones replaced because you can't clean out the foam. The same thing has happened with acrylic. So much of our problem when you get all the way to Home Depot or you get all the way to the grocery store, in many cases, it is a supply shortage. I will admit, in many cases, it's also a panic buying. The toilet paper problem was a panic buying of toilet paper. But interesting to me is we've created a supply chain starting at the manufacturing facility that is really, we're relying on 1 or 2 major manufacturers to produce everything of that particular item. And when they get hit with ransomware, storm, COVID, whatever else can hit us, next thing you know, it just stops the production of everything.
Yeah, this is such a multifaceted situation. I think about, everything you said right on, Sarah. And now I know why, ordering furniture, custom furniture has these incredible lead times because of foam. So thank you. But I think
today old.
Yeah. Here's the thing, right? I think about, again, whether it was Staples, Starbucks, and even CNS wholesale grocers, different moments in time, different industries. When you think about the function that the companies have in-house, right? whether you're a reseller or a manufacturer, the contingency plans, right? It tends to be when you're doing disaster recovery or contingency planning, it tends to be this corporate program that you've got somebody that is asking you a ton of different questions, usually has a very short lead time because we've got to get it complete by X date, not enough time to do it any justice, really, it being a contingency plan, disaster recovery planning. And then to be able to synthesize that down to where are we most vulnerable as a company and what do we do about it, right? There's that whole piece of planning that I can tell you at all companies I've ever worked at, the people filling in the information are kind of like, I've got enough on my plate. This is ridiculous. It's a subpar submission. And I think it's just something that needs to be looked at, right? Something that needs to be looked at. Where are you most vulnerable? What could you do about it? And then you've got to weigh the cost, the risk, cost, benefit, right? Is it worth me investing in X in order to protect against the likelihood of Y? So this has been around forever, and corporations, I think we need to do a better job of that. But then I also think about, why Home Depot is out of things, right? Then there's the recession-proof businesses, right? There are businesses that thrive in the recession. People are spending more time at home. So it's about demand too. So the demand should be understood in liquor sales are up, food is up, the grocery businesses are surging 20% plus. So even if you remove the toilet paper, which people were stockpiling and or potentially profiting on because they'd stockpile and then sell, price gouge people, right? If you take those unacceptable noises out of the equation, the understanding of how demand fluctuates in different situations is really important, because had we had more lead time, right? And again, coronavirus hit, so it's an epidemic, right? There's different treatments for what's happening, but I do think in general and overall, the S&OP, sales and operations planning function, needs to get some grittier teeth and really dig in more to the essentials of what matters most. I think companies are doing some of it, but I think, again, it tends to be a check the box type of enterprise-wide program. And it's not a program, right? It's trying to understand how are you going to protect the business when it soars. And so you can't always look back at the analytics of the data of what our demand has looked like, right? What are the levers looking forward that are coming our way if you look over the horizon that can be anticipated or are potential? And then you've got to decide what can you actually do and where are you going to place your bets in terms of, the juice isn't worth the squeeze, and we can't afford to make a secondary manufacturing facility or another one that says, hey, we got to have more than one building making foam. Now, again, there may be more than one building making foam, but can we afford to have that other facility? Under what conditions could we? Could we partner with a competitive foam company and agree we each take a third? I mean, there's ways to try to proactively solve for it. But I think it's a big challenge, even in just peak surges. And then to Sarah's point, there's been consolidations, but the accuracy of demand planning and being able to add in AI into demand planning that says, I need to be able to look forward with some predictability that's not just speculative, but is based on some science and math, so that we can ready ourselves to our utmost and at least be prepared for dips in the economy where we know Home Depot is going to have more sales because people are doing it yourself more. And again, it's not just Home Depot, but again, though, it backs up to the manufacturer. This is not an easy nut to crack by any stretch, right? And then you've got all of the manufacturers with whatever they're able to produce and output. Who are they going to sell it to? Are they going to sell it to customers they're under contract with that have been loyal to them through the years? Are they going to become more opportunistic and get the better price for it? And then it just all trickles down at the end. The consumer's paying higher prices. I mean, you see it in the wholesale grocer space with the COVID, with the surges in business and with the empty product on the shelves. You see it with independent grocers who can't hold their weight against the big box, powerhouses. That it's really killing the small business people to have access to product that the larger players, because they have more of an arrangement, right? More of a deal on volume based. So it's a multifaceted equation, to say the least.
I think that, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to go back. So from my point of view, what and this is a great time to be in supply chain. And the reason is I think we spent probably from the 80s to now developing very big, efficient supply chains, working really, really hard to get inventory, unnecessary inventory out, and just-in-time production, and scheduling working in a way that it would optimize our production flow and logistics. We worked really hard at creating an end-to-end efficient supply chain. I think what we've now realized in my head, kind of two big things. There's all these exogenous factors that happen, and we can't predict them. But Susan's spot on. AI, and I am a huge believer in AI and in technology. The technology that we have available today and what's coming down the road in the next 5 to 10 to 20 years in supply chain absolutely will allow supply chains to go from being an end-to-end efficient linear machine that at any one time, if it's this end-to-end machine and one piece stops, the whole thing stops. It's going to become an ecosystem. And the ecosystem will have an incredible amount of data, which is where the AI comes in. And the AI is getting better and better and better at predicting. And not just predicting, but also analyzing, well, if this happens, here is the 3 or 4 or the 5 or the magnitude of its impact. So that right now sometimes we're kind of blind when we're doing our various planning. We think, well, the likelihood of the power plant shutting down is minuscule, but we don't know that, oh, by the way, it means all the machines will get ruined, so to speak. So I think the AI's ability to start looking at 20, 30, 40,000 variables and helping us humans discern which variables really matter and what their impacts are, so that we can spend our time creating an ecosystem that really manages those high impact variables, and then keeps a touch on it, so that as things change, we're not sitting here, which is what I think so many of us are. We're sitting here with a really well-functioning 30-year-old supply chain in an era where we need a really well-functioning 2021 supply chain, which doesn't look like 1980.
And I think that's, with my background in AI, I can tell you, and speaking honest to everybody out there, I still to this day believe a lot of AI is marketing words. It's buzzwords. It's just used to grab attention. But what I do believe in, and what's been mind-blowing to me, is in supply chain, the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning. No one can break down the sheer volume of data and the panic buying, all of this trending consumer spending. We're everywhere. It makes no sense. None at all. Times, what people are buying, the way in which they're buying, the quantities, it's all changing daily, monthly, weekly, whatever it is. No human has the capability to look at that, assess it, analyze it, and go, here's my prediction.
Right.
Augmenting with this type of technology, I think, is kind of, not to make it sound scary or AI is going to take over the world, but I don't think it can happen without the augmentation. That, with your experiences in there and what you've seen, I mean, do you think that executives out there, for the ones that are listening in right now, that might be fearful of this, that AI is going to put their employees or themselves out of work, what to get them over that kind of also Luddite type of view, what would you tell them that they need to kind of look at holistically to understand that the future is here, whether you like it or not? I mean, it's here, it happened, it changed. The digital transformation, I think, was COVID, and we got to evolve.
To me, it changes the way people will work or how they'll work, but it doesn't replace people. So I think also, the trust that employees have in the company's honesty with their employees comes into play here too. So if a company's got integrity of doing the right thing, in good times and bad, and are, people are going to be less fearful that, they can't see what's lurking around the corner. So I think there's a big need here for education, informing folks, change management, and understanding what impacts there will be to people. How will it impact me, if at all? What does that look like? How do we prepare people for it? You still need people. So to me, I think it's a matter about how it's managed and remove the fear, but also bring in the reality of the situation. It requires potentially retooling of people and their expertise. And there's nothing wrong with that if everyone's doing it right together and with eyes wide open.
I look at it in a couple of ways. I mean, there are in this world, there are tons of people that have jobs that they consider pretty mundane. And I remember talking to both employees and some company leaders who said when they started using AI to do the mundane activity, the individual workers were now dealing with the exceptions that the AI couldn't deal with. And the workers were way more interested and excited by their job, because instead of doing, in a given hour, 80 of the exact same task in one of a new and different task where you're problem solving, they're doing the problem solving the whole time. So I don't think AI at the lower or at that kind of a worker level is bad. Equally, I think many executives, and I'm using executives broadly, if AI can give us better decision-making capabilities, we're always struggling with those trade-offs. Should I spend my time today working on a contract with vendor X, or should I spend my time today working on the inventory level in plant B? And if AI could tell us, you need to work on the inventory level because I am predicting X, Y, and Z to happen, then we're spending our effort in the right areas. And who wouldn't want to be spending your effort in the right areas? And my final analogy, because I like analogies, but I do liken it to in our own personal lives. We're getting pretty comfortable with technology and AI. I mean, I admit, when my car first had the rear cameras and began telling me I was too close, I didn't really believe it, and I still was looking out the windows. Now I look at the screen with the little red, yellow, green, and I trust what it's telling me, right? I trust my cruise control. I trust my front bumper sensors. I am on the cusp of saying, well, I might as well trust the steering wheel to steer by itself. I mean, it's already steering a little bit to keep me in lane, right? It can read the lane markers. So on an individual basis, we are getting more and more comfortable with AI and technology helping us navigate many, many things. I think it's there in business. Susan's right, it's a change management question, but I think if you simplify it down to business is a bunch of human beings. And if every human being is comfortable using AI in their personal life and they can see how it will help them be more interested, be more engaged, do a better job, focus on the right things, I think individuals will want to leverage that technology. Sorry for being on the soapbox, but I'm
No.
fan that that's going to be the future.
Susan, anything on that? Or
Yeah, I think it's, it's AI, but I mean, if you just look at the course of time and through history, human beings need to be adaptable, right? And that includes forward thinking on what's over the horizon and how do I adapt to that. You can't stay in your same spot with your head down thinking nothing will ever change, right? Because change is inevitable. So I think, there's a resilience to the human being kind of staying on top of what's around them to understand it and evolve with it, not put your head in the sand. I mean, it's no different, it's in a very microcosm kind of way. You think about people that say, hey, this is the way we've always done it. well, they're ultimately bypassed by people that are figuring out another way to get it done. You can't rest on your laurels, I think, just as a human being, you want to have a growth mindset, and you want to be able to continue developing. You don't stop growing. To me, you don't stop growing until your last breath. And I think that the learning agility and being somebody who's interested in learning and continuing that quest for knowledge and learning and evolving as a person and as a professional, those are important traits and skill sets.
So Susan, that ties back to our favorite topic, which is you can't do it the way it's been done the last 30 years. We need diversity, and we need everyone of a diverse nature to stay in the workforce to figure out what this future is going to look like.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I know just from all the people that I've spoken to, and I've watched different types of supply chain webinars and showcases, it's a very challenging time. A lot of people have questions. Is this permanent? Is what we're seeing going to cause? This is just prices are going up, production's down. We have, as you have both said, we have consolidated for decades now. It's, you could look at everything. Insurance, there used to be 20 insurance companies. Now there's 5.
Right.
There's only a couple types of pharmacies. There's no local stores. And, for back when I was a kid, I remember lumber yards were here in Ohio, they were all over the place, like legit lumber yards where they cut raw material and made it. Now you have Home Depot, where you have major lumber yards that they don't even cut it. They're ordering it from a sawmill. And you start to think about this, I don't see a way forward without the adoption of technology. And there's lots of interesting technology out there that could provide a lot of solutions to this. And I think what I feel is another big part of this is, if you're not ready for it, is to partner with a company, partner with one of these vendors to learn from them, ask them about their strategic advisory boards, their customer advisory boards, see if you can come in and speak and learn from those people, have a briefing to understand those types of technologies. Because without it, by sitting there and just, as Susan said, resting on your laurels, that's a sentence for your longevity in that role, because it's going to come, and this is here. It's happening now.
With or without you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's your ecosystem. It's not your linear supply chain. It's your ecosystem.
yeah. Well, and everybody out there, it's time to look at technology.
The silver lining, which we've touched on, is everything that's happening. Things happen for a reason, right? And everything that's happening, the entrepreneur, the innovation that's going to arise from this is going to be incredible. It's just going to be incredible. And the supply chain in particular has been, if I was to traditionalize it and attach a legacy to it, it's, you're only as good as your last load, or it's kind of it's a grind. It's a, supply chain is a completely re-elevated critical function in a company. And I remember even at CNS Grocers, when I used to think about end to end, just because I've had experience in so many different functions, and I was final mile in that particular role. So you can imagine you've got multiple legged relays, and at the end, you've got a performance result, and then you've got some explaining to do when it's not where it needs to be. And you just find yourself traversing upstream, because it's if it's a 4x400 relay and the 3 people before you are crawling, the 4th gal or guy in the relay isn't going to be able to make it up. And so that whole process of integrated planning and the tools required to do it effectively with data and AI is so, so important. And the talent that all of this will attract into what has historically been, the supply chain and necessarily evil or logistics is going to be such an up and coming career and innovative space that people are going to be drawn to. It's going to really change it up. And I think it's going to be very exciting.
Totally. Think about it. I add in, on the procurement side, right, which is a function of supply chain. Mm-hmm. Well, many of these cyber attacks, the biggest access point for cyber attacks into companies tends to be through their small vendors, through the vendors, because most big companies have really built pretty strong systems with strong firewalls, but they work with 10, 20, 30, 40,000 vendors. And all a cyber attack has to find is one of those vendors that they can find and access through their system to access and get into the big company's system, and you have another colonial pipeline. Well, who is responsible for the vendors? It's the procurement department. And in the past, procurement looked at themselves as, well, we do contracts and negotiations. And boy, I think their job is going to change drastically in the future to understand how do we make sure every one of our 100,000 vendors doesn't expose us to a cyber attack? How do we ensure that we don't have a phone manufacturer, we're a boat manufacturer, and there's only one phone manufacturer and we're in trouble? There's so many of those issues now that I think good old procurement even is going to get a lot more exciting.
Never mind technology, right? IT typically or historically low man on the totem pole, right there with supply chain and finance. I mean, these are all critical operating functions that are coming into their own even more, and not the ugly stepchild of an organization. You can market and sell all day long, and I'm not taking away the importance of doing that. But if you can't execute, you're dead in the water.
True.
Now, that's something, what I've seen, I don't know if you both studied, but the rise of Omnichannel through COVID. And, Susan, with your background, I think that technology obviously can help with any type of omnichannel struggles, but from a logistical standpoint, do you think this omnichannel behavior of customers is here to stay permanently? And kind of from a logistics standpoint, where companies even start?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely here to stay, and it's going to continue. I mean, at the end of the day, customers want more than one way to shop. And it's becoming more of a necessity than even a preference. So I absolutely, in the grocer space, I've been digging into that a lot. That requires different strategy and fulfillment centers. That requires, cross-dock locations closer to the customer. That requires a review of the physical network as well as the systems that can be omnichannel. And so that's here to stay. That is here to stay. And the investments that are required to pull that off so that for the customer, they can order online, they can, pop in the store, they can get it delivered. The experience should be the same in terms of the ability for the company to meet the customer's expectations. When am I going to get it? I ordered X. I expect it delivered in full on time per the date you gave me, next business day or what have you. So there's a lot going on. And again, you looked at, it's serendipitous, really. I mean, if you take a positive spin at it, when you think about all of the brick and mortar up to this point, a lot of vacancies. Well, if you don't think that's going to get repurposed into additional mini distribution centers and fulfillment centers, I mean, here we are, right? There's a reason things happen, and there's a purpose that's beyond what we necessarily see directly over the horizon. So I absolutely think omnichannel's here to stay. Absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree totally. I think COVID, if you look at the adoption curve, COVID got us over the tipping point. And as a result, it's never going away. We consumers are very comfortable purchasing items online and having them arrive at the door. It's not going away. And it's just expanding as to the what it can be. And we're just getting more and more comfortable with the what you can buy online.
Now, and I thank you both for that. If it is coming up on the top of the hour for us, and I was wondering, as we close this episode out, if either of you could just share your thoughts to any of those executives, whether it's supply chain, merchandising, operations, logistics, IT, whatever it is, with everything that you've just said, what's the one piece, if you could get into their head and go shake a little bit, like just listen, what would you tell them to kind of get over these hurdles that we're facing right now?
Well, I would say if everything matters at the same time, then nothing really matters, right? So I think the need for an organizational to be rigorous in identifying and pursuing those key initiatives that are most fundamental to their success and to put more rigor at it in an integrated fashion end to end and get those functions connecting on it and then resourcing for it appropriately. So you may have to give and take in terms of funding, right? I mean, think about technology, IT. Here we are, IT really tends to have a hard time getting the funding to do more than one thing, but they're asked to do many things. So I think it's about rigorous focus on the strategies of going forward, understanding what you're going to stop doing or delay doing. I think corporations still really struggle with that. And I think there needs to be consensus at the executive forum on what you're going after and then rally the resources around it. And here you go, be unconventional with how you're going to rally the resources around it. People aren't territory, right? Mm-hmm. Here's what we're going after. Here's what the operating model needs to look like in terms of even the talent deployment strategies. And I think that people, it's not territories that people own. I think the integrated partnerships and integrated accountabilities need to be, you need to be bonused on it. People need to be incented by it. And you really need to be end to end. I would say that's got to change. You can't have sales setting things in motion or marketing setting things in motion without understanding if execution can even handle it. And I think that requires really integrated executive leaders that are making the right horse trading decisions and then sticking by it to get it done.
Well, I think I'm going to be bolder. I think the future is here. And if you're spending time rearranging the chairs on the Titanic, you're gone. I saw a study not too long ago that said the 30 companies, the top companies in the Dow, back in 1980 are no longer here. They're not on the Dow. They're not even here, I guess. Mm-hmm. Bunch of new companies arose. I think there's going to be a continuation of new companies arising. So if you're a supply chain exec, I would strongly encourage you, and this sounds bad, but we've got a little bit of you've got an excuse. We have COVID, we have all these interruptions. So you could spend all your time trying to plug the holes in the dike of your current supply chain, or you could let them go, plug the biggest one, and just pivot drastically toward the future. And I believe the people who pivot the most and the fastest toward the future, they pivot towards adopting AI, they pivot towards adopting technology, they pivot towards adopting a distribution center strategy that's radically different, get out of the old, move to the new, pivot now. That's what I would say is just suck it up and go to the future. Because if you wallow in the past, you'll be one of those companies that's gone. That's my opinion.
Thank you both for those opinions. And I will pivot towards the end of the show and hope that my guests pivot towards that subscribe button below. I want to thank you both for coming today. This was so informative and impactful to a challenge that, the news and media, we all talk about this. This is going to be here much through summer and into fall before at some point we get the manufacturing lines back open and things flowing to some level of normalcy. And to any of the executives out there, I hope that you reach out to Susan and Sarah and ask them questions about their leadership and what they've explained on this show, or leave a comment below, because this is a topic that's not just said and done right here today, but this is hopefully a good opportunity for you to begin thinking about what they've discussed on this episode today. So again, I want to thank you both for coming. It's a pleasure as always.
Thank you.
And have a wonderful afternoon. Bye, everybody.
Take care.